Let's go, though, to the other big story out of Indonesia involving Russia. Those reports circling yesterday that Indonesia was considering letting Russia host an airbase on its soil. Defence Minister Richard Marles was quick to quash the reports, but today Labor is accusing Peter Dutton of jumping the gun.
Peter Dutton is drawing inspiration from one president while seeking to put words in the mouths of another.
What we saw from Peter Dutton yesterday was an extraordinary overreach. He verbaled the President of Indonesia.
Peter Dutton is really too aggro and too reckless to be Australia's Prime Minister.
Well, aggro from a mean girl. Peter Dutton, though, hits back.
The reference I made was obviously to what is a very credible military website, and that talked about government sources and of the Prabowo government sources. Now, the fact is that when you have a foreign minister and a defence minister and a prime minister finding out about decisions from our friends and from countries abroad, when they find out about that on CNN or on Fox or whatever it is, you know that this government is not up to it.
Joining me now to discuss this and more, foreign editor at The Australian, Greg Sheridan. Well, Greg, unpack this for us. What do you think we're not being told?
Well, Peter, it's great to be with you. Look, I think both Albanese and Dutton have both performed poorly on this, but this is a very serious story for Australia. Prabowo Subianto is different from his predecessor Jokowi and very different from his predecessor Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, who was a great friend of Australia. Prabowo went to Russia after he was elected, but before he was inaugurated. Russia is the biggest supplier of military equipment to Indonesia. The opposition is right to insist on a proper intelligence briefing on this, and such a briefing would show there is very intense engagement between Russia and Indonesia. There's no chance Indonesia will allow any foreign country to have a fully owned foreign base in their country, but we in Australia are very smart ourselves at calling foreign bases something else. And I am not one bit reassured by the bland, statements from Richard Marles and Anthony Albanese that there's nothing to see here. And basically, you never hear them mention Indonesia anyway from one month to the next. I think our position in Indonesia is pretty anemic. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on with Russia, and I wouldn't be surprised if military cooperation between those two nations intensified, much to our detriment.
What do we read into the fact that Indonesia has joined the BRIC nations?
Well, our good friend India is a member of the BRICS as well. India and Indonesia both are strategically promiscuous. They're both swing states. I mean, India has a much bigger beef with China than Indonesia has, so that puts it sort of on our side to some extent. But Indonesia is not sympathetic to the United States at the moment, and I think it's been that way for quite a long time. But the situation is not helped by Trump threatening to impose unbelievably punitive tariffs on Indonesia. That just makes the US less popular in Indonesia than it is already. Prabowo wants to be a foreign policy president, but a lot of his instincts are all over the shop. He'll sign a strategic partnership with Australia, but sign up to BRICS. And BRICS is designed really to constrain America. At the same time, Prabowo put out a Peace for Ukraine plan, which was basically a Russian plan some time ago when he was the defence minister. Indonesia is very tricky, and you'd remember, Peter, from your time in government, it requires a lot of attention all the time, not because we love it or don't, but because it's so important to us.
Let's go to revelations out of the United Kingdom that less than a month before the UK government was forced to intervene to save British steel, which has happened in the last week, Downing Street had actually backed Chinese investment in key parts of the nation's critical infrastructure. According to the Times newspaper, Britain's Energy Secretary signed an agreement which promised close cooperation with Beijing. Now, we know how hard it was to put pressure, Australia did and others, on the United Kingdom at the time to avoid going down the Huawei path with their 5G network. I find these revelations extraordinary, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is the UK is a bit of a mess in relation to China policy, and all of its bad policies are coming home together. So it has imposed, like Australia, massively unnecessary, massively high energy costs. And it's therefore pretty hard to run a profitable steel industry. The Chinese own this steel plant and were going to shut it down. So Chinese investment wasn't a saviour for the steel industry. Now the British government has taken control of it, but won't fully nationalise it because that would cost billions of pounds. And then they want it to operate on so-called green energy, which is going to cost billions and billions of pounds. And if they don't do this, they'll be the only G7 country without any capacity to make any steel at all. So they've looked at China as the saviour. That's very dumb. They've imposed massive energy costs on themselves, which makes it very, very difficult to run a steel industry. And so what can they do? They can nationalise it or just go out of business. And neither of those is a good choice.
Greg, just quickly, I'm almost out of time. We can't leave the story of the missing defence policies. You've got Peter Lay, former Chief of Army, out there today calling the politicians clowns. You know, basically, how can we not be boosting our defence spending above the 2% of GDP committed? He wants it much higher than that, of course. But yes, let's talk about the coalition. Where's Andrew Hastie? Where's the policy? I've been told it's been coming for weeks. I haven't seen it. What about Labor too, though? I mean, they're just as bad.
Oh, they're much worse. They're terrible. I mean, I'm criticising the opposition for not giving us a better alternative. But Labor deserves to lose the election for its defence record. I mean, they haven't increased defence spending as a percentage of GDP, almost alone amongst Western countries. We spend lower than the OECD average, yet we have no allies nearby. Trump has, raised a big question mark over American security guarantees. Meanwhile, the Chinese are sending gunships to humiliate us. The Russians are seeking bases in our region, so are the Chinese, and we're doing nothing. The Albanese government's record is appalling. It's spending more money on nuclear subs and no money on the rest of our defence. But at the same time, how is it that the Liberals haven't released a defence policy yet, haven't committed to spend more money themselves, and apparently have poor old Andrew Hastie, the so-called defence spokesman, in hiding or witness protection or something, and won't let him out to speak, even on this latest matter? Why didn't we hear about Andrew Hastie on this Russian base in Indonesia? Something weird is happening in Dutton's opposition, and it doesn't fill me with much confidence.
I'll leave it there, Greg. Hopefully we'll have a defence policy next week to talk about.